They say blood is thicker than water, but in the Silver Creek pack, blood was just a currency. 19-year-old Elara Vance was the Alpha's daughter, yet she slept on the floor and ate scraps. She thought she had hit rock bottom until the night her father dragged her out of bed and sold her to their sworn enemy to settle a gambling debt. She believed she was marching to her execution. She didn't know that the terrifying Alpha King of the rival pack hadn't just bought a servant. He had just found the woman who had haunted his dreams every single night for 5 years. But when the truth comes out, the war for her heart and her life will burn the world to the ground. The winter wind howled through the cracked window pane of the attic, carrying with it the scent of pine and impending snow. Elara Vance shivered, pulling the thin, moth-eaten grey blanket tighter around her shoulders. At 19, she should have been attending the Pack Gala's training with the elite warriors, or perhaps preparing to find her mate. Instead, the daughter of Alpha Garrick Vance was on her knees, scrubbing the floorboards of the servants' quarters until her knuckles were raw and bleeding. To the outside world, the Silver Creek Pack was a proud traditional lineage in the wilds of Montana. But inside the walls of the sprawling, decaying estate, it was a kingdom of rot, and Elara was its lowest subject. "Elara!" The voice boomed from downstairs, vibrating through the floorboards. It was her father. Her wolf, a small and timid creature buried deep within her psyche, whimpered. Garrick never called for her, unless something was broken, or he needed someone to take the blame for his drunken outbursts. Elara scrambled to her feet, wiping her hands on her stained apron. She rushed down the servants' staircase, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. When she reached the main office, the heavy oak door was slightly ajar. She heard the clinking of crystal glasses and the low, unfamiliar rumble of another man's voice. "You have to understand, Garrick," the stranger said, his tone smooth, but laced with a metallic edge of danger. "The debt is substantial. $3 million plus the territorial dispute over the Northern Pass. The council won't wait any longer." "I have the money coming," Garrick lied. Elara knew that tone. It was the desperate, sweaty tone of a man who had bet on the wrong horse and lost everything again. "I just need more time, Lucian." "Lucian!" Elara froze in the hallway shadows. The name sent a chill down her spine, colder than the winter draft. Lucian Cross was the beta and executioner for the Obsidian Shadow Pack, the most ruthless, wealthy, and militarily advanced pack in North America. Their Alpha King, Damon Thorne, was rumored to be a monster who ruled with an iron fist and had no soul. "Time is a luxury you cannot afford," Lucian replied. "King Damon is tired of your excuses. He wants payment, tonight. Or we take the land and we burn this house down with you inside it." There was a silence heavy and suffocating, then the sound of a chair scraping back. "I don't have the cash," Garrick admitted, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But I have assets, pure blood assets." Elara's breath hitched. "I'm listening," Lucian said, sounding bored. "My daughter," Garrick said. Elara clamped a hand over her mouth to stop a scream. "Which one?" Lucian asked. "The eldest Sarah, the one engaged to the Delta." "No, not Sarah," Garrick scoffed. "She's useful. I'm talking about the youngest, Elara. She's unpresented. A runt. But she has the Vance bloodline. She's a virgin. She can cook clean and she's obedient. She's pretty enough if you wash the grime off her. You're offering your own daughter as collateral." Lucian sounded mildly amused but not disgusted. "Not collateral," Garrick corrected, desperation spiking. Payment, full ownership. Take her. Breed her, use her as a servant, put her in the mines. I don't care. Just wipe the debt. Elara felt the world tilt on its axis. Her father wasn't just cruel. He was selling her. Like cattle. Like a piece of furniture he no longer liked. Bring her in, Lucian commanded. Elara, Garrick roared again. She didn't make him wait. If she ran, they would hunt her down. She pushed the door open, keeping her head low, her eyes fixed on the expensive Persian rug. Here she is, Garrick said, gesturing to her with a wave of his whiskey glass. Elara, this is Beta Lucian of the Obsidian Shadow Pack. You are leaving with him. Elara looked up, then her eyes meeting the stranger's. Lucian was terrifyingly handsome, wearing a tailored black suit that cost more than this Entral-Sertau house. His eyes were cold, calculating steel. He looked her up and down, analyzing her like a horse at an auction. He noted the bruise on her cheek, the tattered clothes, the malnutrition. She looks weak, Lucian stated flatly. She's resilient, Garrick insisted. She takes a beating and keeps working. She's worth the 3 million Lucian. Think of the humiliation it saves you, taking the enemy Alpha's daughter as a slave. Damon will love the irony. Lucian paused. He pulled out his phone, typing a quick message. A moment later the phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smirked. The king accepts, Lucian said, slipping the phone back into his pocket. The debt is cleared. The girl comes with me. Now. Just like that, Garrick asked, looking relieved and sickeningly triumphant. Just like that. Go pack your things, girl. You have 5 minutes. Elara didn't move. She looked at her father, tears welling in her green eyes. Father, please, they'll kill me. Garrick didn't even look at her. He poured himself another drink. Then you better be obedient. Hadn't you get out of my sight? The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Elara turned and ran up the stairs, grabbing a small duffel bag. She packed her only picture of her late mother, a spare sweater and a hairbrush. That was all she owned. 5 minutes later, she was sitting in the back of a black armored SUV, watching the Silver Creek estate disappear in the rearview mirror. She wasn't crying anymore. The shock had numbed her. She was property now. She was headed into the lair of the Alpha King, a man known for slaughtering his enemies without blinking. She expected to die tonight, but as the car sped toward the border, Elara made a silent vow. If I am going to die, I will not die on my knees, like my father lives. The drive took 4 hours. They crossed the border from the rugged, untamed wilderness of Silver Creek into the sleek, modernized territory of Obsidian Shadow. The difference was jarring. The roads became smooth asphalt lined with streetlights. They passed thriving towns, well-lit schools, and patrols of guards who looked like military special forces rather than rugged shifters. Elara sat in silence. Lucian hadn't spoken a word to her, though he occasionally glanced at her through the rearview mirror with an unreadable expression. They began to ascend a winding mountain road. At the summit stood the Obsidian Castle. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture and ancient stone glass walls blending with black rock overlooking a sprawling city below. It radiated power. "We're here," Lucian said, parking the car in a massive underground garage filled with luxury vehicles. "Get out!" Elara grabbed her bag, her legs trembling. The air here smelled different, richer, sharper. It smelled like Alpha. Lucian led her to a private elevator. "The king is in his study. He wants to inspect his purchase immediately." Is he going to kill me?" Elara whispered, her voice cracking. Lucian looked at her, his hand hovering over the elevator button. For the first time, his expression softened just a fraction. Damon Thorne is many things, Elara, but he is not wasteful. If you are useful, you will live. The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse suite that spanned the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the moonlit mountains. A fire crackled in a massive stone hearth. Standing by the window with his back to them was a man. Even from behind, the sheer size of him was overwhelming. His shoulders were broad, straining against a black dress shirt. He radiated an aura of dominance, so potent that Elara's knees nearly buckled. This was the Alpha King, the boogeyman of the werewolf world. "Leave us, Lucian," the king said. His voice was a deep baritone like thunder rolling in the distance. "Sir, are you sure?" Lucian asked. "She's Garrick's blood. Leave us." Lucian nodded once to Elara, a silent good luck, and retreated into the elevator. Elara stood alone in the center of the room, clutching her bag to her chest like a shield. Damon Thorne turned around. Elara's breath caught in her throat. He was devastating. High cheekbones, a jawline that could cut glass, and unruly dark hair that fell over his forehead. But it was his eyes that froze her. They were heterochromatic, one a piercing icy blue, the other a swirling molten gold. He looked tired, not physically but spiritually. There were dark circles under those mesmerizing eyes. Damon stared at her. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stared, his gaze tracking from her worn-out sneakers to her messy bun. Inside Damon's head, a storm was breaking. For 5 years, Damon had suffered from a recurring dream. Every night, the moment he closed his eyes, he saw a woman. She was always in the shadows, crying or running or bleeding. He could never see her face clearly, but he knew her scent, lavender and rain. He knew the sound of her heartbeat. The dreams were so vivid, they woke him up in cold sweats, his wolf howling in agony, ponging for a mate he couldn't find. He had searched the world for the woman in the dreams, convinced she was his fated mate. He had found no one. He had resigned himself to madness, believing he was cursed to dream of a ghost. And now, standing in his living room, sold to him for the price of a gambling debt, was her. The scent hit him like a physical blow. Lavender and rain. Beneath the smell of cheap soap and fear, it was there. Intoxicating. Undeniable. Damon took a step forward. Elara flinched, taking a step back. "Please," she whispered, "I'll do whatever work you need. Kitchen's cleaning. Just don't hurt me." Damon stopped. His heart was racing so fast it hurt. His wolf was clawing at his rib cage, roaring, "Mine. Mate." Found her. But he saw the terror in her eyes. She thought he was a monster. And technically he had just bought her. If he revealed they were mates now, she wouldn't believe him. She would think it was a trick, another form of control. He had to be careful. He had to be strategic. He was a king, after all. "You are Garrick's daughter." Damon asked, his voice rougher than he intended, because he was fighting the urge to fall to his knees and beg for her forgiveness for what her father had done. "Yes, Alpha," she said, looking at the floor. "Look at me," he commanded. She slowly lifted her chin. The bruise on her cheek was purple and angry. Damon's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through him. Someone touched her. Garrick touched her. He would flay the man alive. "What is your name?" he asked, forcing his voice to remain neutral. Elara, sir. Elara. He tested the name. It felt like honey on his tongue. It fit the woman in his dreams perfectly. You are not a servant here, Elara, Damon said slowly. Elara blinked, confused. But my father sold me to settle the debt. Your father is a fool who doesn't know the value of what he held, Damon growled. He walked over to the wet bar and poured a glass of water, needing something to do with his hands before he grabbed her. He walked back and held the glass out to her. She hesitated, then took it, her fingers brushing his. Sparks. Literal electric sparks shot up Damon's arm. Elara gasped and nearly dropped the glass. She stared at her hand, then up at him, her eyes wide with shock. She felt it too. The mate bond. But Elara shook her head violently. No, impossible, I'm a runt. He's the Alpha King. It's just static electricity. Drink, Damon said softly. You look dehydrated. She drank the cool water, soothing her parched throat. You will stay in the East Wing, Damon announced, making a split-second decision. He couldn't put her in the servants' quarters. He couldn't have her far from him. There is a suite there. You will have new clothes, food, and medical attention for that face. Why? Elara asked, suspicion clouding her features. What do you want from me? Are you fattening me up? Damon let out a dry, humorless chuckle. No, Elara. I am not the witch from Hansel and Gretel. I bought your contract. He stepped closer, leaning down so his face was inches from hers. He could smell the spike in her pheromones' arousal mixed with fear. That means you belong to me now, he whispered, his golden eye flashing. And I take very good care of what is mine. Go to your room, lock the door, and do not open it for anyone but me. He pressed a button on the wall, and a maid appeared almost instantly. Show Miss Vance to the royal guest suite. Get the pack doctor, now. As Elara was led away, she looked back over her shoulder one last time. The Alpha King was watching her with an intensity that burned. Once the elevator doors closed, Damon Thorne collapsed onto his leather sofa. He buried his face in his hands. I found her, he whispered to the empty room. God help me, I bought my own soulmate. But the drama was just beginning, because Damon knew Garrick. Once the old wolf realized that Elara wasn't just a worthless runt, but the fated mate to the most powerful king in the world, he would want her back. And he would use every dirty trick in the book to get her. Damon pulled out his phone. Lucian, he barked into the receiver. Double the border patrols, and get a team ready. We're going to need to pay Silver Creek another visit very soon. Elara woke with a gasp, her body jerking upright as if expecting a blow. But instead of the damp cold of her attic mattress, her fingers dug into sheets made of Egyptian cotton. The air didn't smell of mildew and pine sol. It smelled of lavender rain and him. She blinked, disoriented. The room was massive, bigger than the entire ground floor of her father's house. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a vanity stocked with expensive creams, a walk-in closet filled with designer clothes, still bearing tags, and a breakfast cart waiting at the foot of the bed. A silver tray held pancakes, fresh fruit, and coffee. There was a note on heavy black cardstock. Eat, then dress. The doctor arrives at 10:00 a.m. DT. Elara traced the sharp, angular handwriting. Damon Thorne, the monster of the North. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But her wolf... Her wolf was pacing inside her chest, not in fear, but in a strange, restless anticipation. She forced herself to eat. Years of starvation had taught her never to refuse food. As she finished, a sharp knock echoed on the door. "Come in," she squeaked. The door swung open, but it wasn't the doctor. It was a woman. She was tall, statuesque, with hair the color of spilled raven feathers and eyes like emerald shards. She wore the uniform of the Obsidian Guard, tight tactical gear that showed off a lethal physique. This was Mara, the lead tracker for the Obsidian Pack, and rumor had it the woman who had spent the last 5 years trying to warm the king's bed. Mara didn't bow. She didn't smile. She stalked into the room, her boots heavy on the plush carpet, and stopped at the foot of the bed, crossing her arms. "So," Mara said, her voice dripping with disdain, "you're the $3 million purchase." Elara pulled the duvet up to her chin. "I'm Elara. I know who you are. Garrick Vance's runt daughter." Mara sneered, her eyes scanning Elara's thin frame. "King Daemon is a strategic genius. But even I fail to see the value in this investment. You look like you'd break if the wind blew too hard." "I didn't ask to be here," Elara said, a spark of defiance flaring in her chest. She was tired of people talking about her like she was livestock. "Don't get comfortable," Mara warned, leaning in. "Daemon might be playing some game with your father, using you as a pawn. But don't mistake his hospitality for affection. The king doesn't have a heart, and he certainly doesn't have room in his life for a weakling from a traitorous bloodline. Once he's bored with you, you'll end up in the mines with the rest of the strays." "Is that a threat?" A deep voice rumbled from the doorway. Mara froze, her scent spiked with sudden fear. Daemon stood there leaning against the doorframe. He was dressed casually today, in dark jeans and a grey t-shirt that clung to his biceps, but his expression was anything but casual. His heterochromatic eyes were fixed on Mara with the intensity of a laser sight. "Alpha?" Mara dipped her head quickly, her arrogance evaporating. "I was just explaining the house rules." "I believe the rule was that no one was to disturb her," Daemon said, pushing off the doorframe and walking into the room. The temperature seemed to rise with every step he took. He stopped between the two women, acting as a physical wall shielding Elara. "Get out, Mara. Run the perimeter. Twice." Mara's jaw tightened, humiliation flushing her cheeks. She shot Elara one last, hateful glare before turning on her heel and marching out. Daemon didn't watch her go. He turned to Elara, his expression softening instantly. "Did she hurt you?" "No," Elara whispered. She clutched the note he had left. She said you'd get bored of me, that I'd end up in the mines." Daemon sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful to keep a respectful distance. "Mara is jealous and speaks out of turn. You are not going to the mines, Elara. You are not a prisoner here." "I was sold," Elara reminded him, her voice trembling. "That makes me a slave." "A transaction took place, yes," Daemon admitted, his golden eye swirling. "But only to get you out of that house. You are a guest here. Eventually. Perhaps more." He let the words hang in the air. "More." "Why?" Elara asked, her green eyes searching his. "Why me? My father has other daughters. Prettier ones. Stronger ones. Why did you take the runt?" Daemon looked at her. Really looked at her. He wanted to tell her everything. That she wasn't a runt, she was a queen who had been starved of love and nutrition, that he had dreamed of her face before he even knew her name. Instead, he reached out. His large, calloused hand hovered over hers, then gently covered it. The spark was immediate. Elara gasped. It wasn't just static. It was a warm, golden hum that traveled from her hand straight to her heart. Her wolf, usually silent, let out a happy yip. Because... Damon said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. I saw something in you that no one else did. You survived hell, Elara. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you the strongest person I've ever met. Elara stared at him, stunned. No one had ever complimented her. Not once. Get dressed, Damon said, standing up abruptly as if the contact was burning him too. I'm taking you to the training grounds. If you're going to live in my world, you need to learn how to defend yourself. I won't have you afraid of people like Mara ever again. As he walked to the door, Elara called out. Damon. He paused, his hand on the knob. It was the first time she had used his name without a title. Thank you, she said, softly. Damon didn't turn around, but Elara saw the tips of his ears turn a faint shade of red. Be ready in 10 minutes, he grunted and left. For the first time in her life, Elara didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a challenge. And maybe, just maybe, she wanted to see if she could meet it. The training grounds of the Obsidian Shadow Pack were a technological marvel. An indoor arena with climate control padded floors and a holographic simulation deck. Warriors sparred in the center ring, their movements a blur of speed and power. When Damon walked in, with Elara trailing behind him, the entire room went silent. The Alpha King never brought women here. The training ground was a place of blood and sweat, not social calls. Eyes forward, Damon barked, and the warriors instantly scrambled back to their drills, though Elara could feel their curious gazes burning into her back. Damon led her to a private corner of the gym with heavy bags. Punch it, he commanded. Elara looked at the heavy leather bag. She made a fist, tucking her thumb inside her fingers. Damon immediately grabbed her wrist. No, you'll break your thumb like that. He moved behind her, his chest pressed lightly against her back, his heat enveloping her. He reached around his hands, covering hers, molding her fingers into the correct shape. Thumb on the outside, knuckles aligned. Power comes from the hips, not the cool's arm. Elara could barely breathe. Being this close to him was overwhelming. His scent, cedar musk and storm, was making her head spin. She could feel the hard wall of his muscles against her spine. Focus, he murmured into her ear, his breath tickling her neck. She tried. She threw a punch. It was weak. Again, he ordered. They spent an hour there. Damon was a relentless teacher demanding perfection, but he was never cruel. He praised her when she corrected her stance. He handed her water when she panted. By the end of it, Elara was sweating, her muscles ached, but she felt a rush of endorphins she had never experienced. Not bad, Damon said, tossing her a towel. You have good instincts. You just need muscle mass. Suddenly, the double doors of the gym burst open. Lucian the Beta sprinted in. His face, usually a mask of calm, was pale. Damon, Lucian called out, ignoring protocol. We have a problem. A level 1 problem. Damon's demeanor shifted instantly. The gentle teacher vanished. The Alpha King returned. Speak. Lucian glanced at Alara. It's Garrick. He's on the line. He's rescinding the deal. Damon let out a dark laugh. The deal is done. He signed the contract. He says he has new information, Lucian said tightly. He says he knows what she is. Damon froze. The air in the gym grew heavy, the pressure dropping as the Alpha's aura flared uncontrollably. The other warriors stopped sparring, sensing the danger. Take Alara to my office, Damon commanded Lucian. Lock it down. No one in or out. Damon, Alara asked, fear creeping back into her voice. What is he talking about? What am I? Go with Lucian, Damon said, his voice hard, leaving no room for argument. 10 minutes later, Damon stood in his soundproof war room, staring at the large croissant where Garrick Vance's face was displayed via video link. Garrick looked disheveled, drunk, but his eyes held a malicious gleam. You tricked me, you son of a bitch, Garrick spat. I bought a product you were desperate to sell, Damon replied coolly. Buyer's remorse is not my problem. I didn't know, Garrick shouted. I didn't know she was the one I thought she was a dud. But I went through her mother's old journals after you left. I found the lineage papers. Damon's hands gripped the edge of the mahogany table so hard the wood splintered. Tread carefully, Garrick. Her mother wasn't a stray, was she? Garrick sneered. I stole her from the Crescent Moon Pack 20 years ago, but I never knew who she really was. She was a Selene bloodline, a direct descendant of the first wolf. Damon didn't react, but internally his world rocked. The Selene bloodline was a myth. Wolves with that blood were said to possess ancient magic, the ability to heal to calm feral wolves, and to birth alphas of unimaginable power. They were hunted to extinction centuries ago. If Alara was a Selene wolf, she was the most valuable creature on the planet. So here is the new deal. Garrick grinned, showing yellow teeth. You want to keep her fine, but 3 million isn't enough. I want 50 million, and I want the Northern Pass returned. Or I tell the Council. I tell every alpha in the country that Damon Thorne is hoarding the last Selene wolf. How long do you think your walls will hold when 10,000 wolves come for her? Damon's eyes glowed, one blue, one gold. The beast inside him surfaced a low, vibrating growl, filling the room. You threaten me? Damon asked, his voice deadly quiet. I'm just doing business. Garrick shrugged. You have 24 hours to transfer the funds, or the world finds out. The screen went black. Damon stood in the silence, his chest heaving. This changed everything. He thought she was just his mate, a precious secret he could keep. But if she was of the Selene blood, she was a walking target. Every power-hungry alpha, every rogue, every scientist would want her. He couldn't hide her. He had to prepare her. He turned and walked toward his office where Alara was waiting. He slammed the door open. Alara jumped from the chair where she had been waiting. Damon, what happened? Is it my father? Damon looked at her. He saw the fear, but he also saw the green eyes that held the spark of an ancient power she didn't even know she possessed. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing her by the shoulders. Listen to me very closely, Alara. Your life as a servant is over. Your life as a quiet girl in the background is over. You're scaring me, she whispered. Good, Damon said fiercely. Be scared. Fear keeps you alive, because from this moment on, you are not just a guest. You are my priority, and I am going to teach you how to bring this world to its knees before it tries to take you from me. Why? She cried out, frustrated by the riddles. What am I to you? Damon couldn't hold it back any more. The threat of losing her had shattered his restraint. He grabbed her hand and pressed it against his chest right over his heart. It was beating wildly, a frantic rhythm that matched her own. Can't you feel it? He rasped. The heat, the pull, the electricity. Elara's eyes widened. She could feel it. It was undeniable. Yes, she breathed. I didn't buy you for a debt, Elara. Damon confessed, his forehead resting against hers. I bought you because I have been dreaming of your face for 5 years. You are not a runt. You are my fated mate, and I will burn the entire world to ash before I let Garrick Vance or anyone else touch you again. Elara stopped breathing. The words hung in the air, impossible and absolute. Mate. The Alpha King was her mate. And outside the castle walls, the storm was just beginning. The silence in the office was deafening. The words fated mate hung between them, heavy and shimmering with an ancient truth that Elara had been too broken to see. She pulled her hand back, clutching it to her chest as if she had been burned. Me, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. You're the Alpha King. You control half the continent. I scrub floors. I can't even shift. I don't have a wolf. You do. Damon said, his conviction absolute. He didn't try to touch her again, sensing her overwhelm. Instead, he walked to a bookshelf and pulled out a leather-bound tome that looked centuries old. You don't have a weak wolf, Elara. You have a suppressed one. Your mother knew what you were. She bound your wolf with magic to hide your scent. That's why you never presented. That's why you appeared to be a runt. Elara stared at him. My mother. She died when I was 5. How could she? She was protecting you from your father, Damon explained, slamming the heavy book onto the desk. He flipped the pages until he landed on an illustration of a white wolf with violet eyes. The Selene bloodline. They are the healers, the peacemakers, and the amplifiers of alpha power. If Garrick had known what you were, he wouldn't have just sold you. He would have bred you like a prize mare to create an army of super soldiers. Your mother saved you by making you seem worthless. Elara felt the room spin. Her entire life, the abuse, the neglect, the feeling of being a mistake, had been a calculated lie to keep her alive. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and fast. So what now? She asked, her voice trembling. Garrick knows. He's going to tell the world. No. Damon growled, the gold in his eye swirling violently. He won't get the chance. We have 24 hours. In that time, I'm going to break the seal on your wolf. You need to be able to defend yourself if I am not here. If you're not here, panic spiked in her chest. I have to go to Silver Creek, Damon said grimly. Garrick thinks I'm going to pay him 50 million. Instead, I'm going to take a strike team and remove his head from his shoulders. It's the only way to silence him permanently. He'll kill you, Elara gasped. He has traps. He's devious. I am the king, Damon stated simply. I am death. He reached out a hand. Come with me. To the ritual room. We have work to do. They descended deep into the bowels of the castle, into a stone chamber lit by torches. The air here was thick with ozone and magic. In the center was a pool of water fed by an underground spring. Get in the water, Damon instructed. Elara hesitated, then kicked off her shoes and waded in. The water was freezing, shocking her system. She gasped, her teeth chattering. Damon knelt at the edge of the pool. The seal is psychological as much as it is magical. You have to want the wolf. You have to stop believing you are weak. I try, she shivered. Don't try, Damon snapped. Feel. He extended his claws, sharp and black, and sliced his own palm. Blood welled up dark and rich. He offered his hand to her. Blood calls to blood, he said. Drink. My blood will surge through yours. It will burn away the seal. But it will hurt. Elara looked at the blood, then at his eyes. She saw fear there, not for himself, but for her. He was terrified of losing her. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just property to him. She was his other half. She took his hand and brought it to her lips. The taste was metallic, hot, and electric. The moment the blood hit her tongue, Elara screamed. It felt like she had swallowed liquid fire. Her veins turned into rivers of lava. She thrashed in the water, her back arching her bones, cracking and reshaping. Breathe, Damon shouted, wading into the water to hold her up as she convulsed. Fight it, Elara. Let her out. Let who out? Her mind was fracturing. And then she heard it. A voice in her head, not a whimper, but a roar. I am here. A shock wave of power exploded from Elara's body. The water in the pool blasted outward, drenching the stone walls. The torches flared white-hot and then extinguished. In the darkness, two glowing violet eyes opened. Damon stood back, chest heaving, soaked to the bone. Standing in the center of the drained pool was not a woman, but a wolf. She was magnificent. Pure white fur that seemed to glow with its own light, taller and sleeker than any female wolf he had ever seen. The white wolf looked at Damon. She dipped her head low, not in submission, but in greeting. Mate. Damon fell to his knees. The power rolling off her was intoxicating. It soothed the savage edges of his own soul. Elara shifted back, collapsing into human form, naked and shivering. Damon had a robe around her, in a second, scooping her up into his arms. You did it, he whispered into her hair, kissing her forehead fiercely. You are perfect. Elara felt exhausted, but for the first time she felt whole. She buried her face in his neck, inhaling his scent. I felt her, she murmured sleepily. She's strong. She is, Damon agreed. He carried her toward the elevator. Rest now, because tomorrow war comes. But as the elevator doors closed, neither of them saw the shadow lurking in the corridor. Mara stepped out from behind a pillar, her face twisted in a mask of pure hatred. She had seen everything. The ritual, the white wolf, the mating. Selena Blood, Mara hissed to herself. She's a freak, a monster. Mara pulled out a burner phone. She dialed a number she had sworn never to use. It's me, Mara whispered into the phone. I have information, but I want a guarantee. When you take the king down, I want the girl. I want to be the one to kill her. On the other end of the line, Garrick Vance chuckled. Deal. The next morning, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with the threat of a storm. The atmosphere inside the obsidian castle was tense. Warriors were gearing up, checking weapons, and loading into armored transports. Damon stood in the courtyard, fully armored, in tactical black Kevlar. A massive assault rifle hung across his chest, and a blade strapped to his thigh. He looked every inch the god of war. Elara stood by the main doors, wrapped in a thick wool coat. She felt a sick knot in her stomach. "Do you have to go?" she asked, grabbing the lapel of his tactical vest. "If I don't, he exposes you." Damon said, his voice low. "I can't risk the council coming for you. Garrick dies today. It ends today." He cupped her face. "Lucian stays with you. The castle is on lockdown. The security grid is impenetrable. No one gets in without a retinal scan and a blood sample. You are safe here." "Come back to me," she whispered. "Always," he promised. He leaned down and kissed her, a searing, possessive kiss that tasted of goodbye. He turned and jumped into the lead SUV. The convoy of 20 vehicles roared to life and sped down the mountain, disappearing into the mist. Elara watched them go until they were specks in the distance. A cold wind blew, chilling her despite the coat. "Come inside, Luna," Lucian said, gently, using her title for the first time. "It's not safe out here." Elara nodded and turned back inside. 3 hours passed. The castle was quiet. Elara sat in the library, trying to read, but her eyes kept drifting to the clock. Damon should be crossing the border by now. The fighting would start soon. Suddenly the lights flickered. The emergency sirens blared a deafening rhythmic wail that signaled a perimeter breach. "What's happening?" Elara dropped her book, her heart leaping into her throat. Lucian burst into the room, his gun drawn. "System failure. The main gates just opened. Someone overrode the security protocols manually." "Who could do that?" Elara asked. "Only a high-ranking officer." Lucian grimaced. "We have to get you to the safe room. Now!" He grabbed her arm, dragging her into the hallway. But the hallway was already full of smoke. Gunfire echoed from the lower levels, loud, chaotic bursts of automatic fire. "They're inside," Lucian cursed. "How the hell are they inside so fast?" As they rounded the corner toward the safe room, a figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking their path. It was Mara. She held a silenced pistol in her hand, but she wasn't aiming at the intruders. She was aiming at Lucian. "Mara, get down!" Lucian shouted. "We have hostiles." "I know," Mara said calmly. "I let them in." Bang! Lucian crumpled a bullet in his shoulder. He shouted in pain, dropping his weapon as he fell to the ground. Elara screamed, backing away. "Mara! What have you done? I'm saving the pack." Mara spat her eyes manic. "Damon is blinded by you. He's going to start a war with the council for a piece of trash like you. I'm fixing his mistake." Behind Mara, heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. A dozen mercenaries wearing masks and bearing the crest of the Silver Creek pack swarmed the hallway. Leading them was a man Elara knew too well. Not her father, he was too cowardly to lead the charge, but his head enforcer, a brutal, scar-faced wolf named Kyle. Well. Kyle grinned, his eyes raking over Elara. The boss was right. The beta bitch left the door wide open. "Take her," Mara commanded, pointing her gun at Elara. "Do whatever you want with her. Just get her out of my castle." Kyle laughed and backhanded Mara across the face. She went down hard, dropping her gun. "Don't give me orders, traitor. We take what we want." Kyle turned to Elara. "Your daddy misses you, sweetheart. He's got a buyer lined up, a genetics lab in Russia. They pay by the ounce for blood like yours." Elara backed up until her back hit the stone wall. She was trapped. Lucian was bleeding out on the floor. Damon was hours away, chasing a decoy. She was alone. No, the voice in her head growled. Not alone. Kyle lunged for her, reaching for her throat. Elara didn't scream. She closed her eyes and pulled on the thread of power Damon had unlocked. She didn't try to shift, there wasn't room. She just pushed the energy out. Get away! A shockwave of pure white light exploded from Elara's chest. It hit Kyle like a freight train, lifting his 200-pound body and blasting him backward through the air. He smashed into the stone pillar 20 feet away with a sickening crunch of bone. The other mercenaries froze, shielding their eyes from the blinding radiance. Elara opened her eyes. They were glowing violet. The air around her crackled with static. "If you want to take me," Elara said. Her voice layered with the growl of her wolf, echoing with a terrifying power. "You're going to have to kill me first." But she was untrained. She was exhausted from the blast. Her knees wobbled. Before she could summon another blast, a dart hit her in the neck. She gasped, reaching for the tranquilizer, but her vision blurred instantly. The world tilted. "Grab her," Kyle wheezed from the floor, spitting blood. "Before she wakes up." Elara felt rough hands grab her arms. She tried to fight, but her limbs felt like lead. As she was dragged into the darkness, the last thing she saw was Lucian, crawling toward his phone, leaving a trail of blood, trying desperately to call his king. The trap at Silver Creek had been perfect. Too perfect. Damon kicked open the doors to Garrick's manor, his assault rifle raised only to find an empty house. Dust motes danced in the light. There were no guards, no Garrick. Just a pre-recorded message playing on a loop on the living room TV, a video of Garrick laughing. Damon's phone buzzed. It was Lucian. "Damon." Lucian's voice was a wet gurgle. "Mara. Traitor. They took her. The Citadel." The phone clattered to the floor. Damon didn't scream. He didn't roar. He went unnervingly silent. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees frost creeping across the windows. His wolf, usually a chaotic storm, focused into a singular razor-sharp point of hatred. The Citadel, the neutral ground where the High Council met. It was the only place Garrick would feel safe enough to sell a Selene wolf, surrounded by the most powerful alphas in the world, who would all want a piece of the prize. "Get back in the trucks," Damon said to his men. His voice sounded like grinding stones. "We are not going to war. We are going to an execution." Elara woke to the blinding glare of spotlights. She was chained to a steel pillar in the center of a massive amphitheater. The Citadel was an ancient stone structure, but tonight it was filled with modern monsters. In the tiered seats sat the 12 members of the High Council, along with dozens of wealthy private buyers, rogue generals, genetics CEOs, and rival alphas. Her head throbbed from the tranquilizer. She pulled at the chains, but they were silver-laced. They burned her skin, suppressing her wolf. "Ladies and gentlemen," Garrick Vance's voice boomed over a microphone. He stood on a podium wearing a tuxedo, looking every bit the slimy salesman he was. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice. What I have for you tonight is not a myth. It is biology." He gestured to Elara, "the last living carrier of the Selene gene. Her blood can heal any wound. Her womb can produce alphas that will rule nations. The starting bid is $50 million. "60, shouted a man in a lab coat. 70, countered a heavy-set alpha from the south. Elara scanned the crowd. She felt sick. They were bidding on her parts, her blood, her children. She looked for a way out, but she was surrounded by elite guards. 100 million, a voice rang out from the back. Garrick grinned, sweating with excitement. 100 million going once. Boom. The massive iron doors of the citadel didn't just open. They were blown off their hinges. An armored SUV flew through the smoke, skidding into the center of the arena, crushing the podium where Garrick had been standing just seconds before. Garrick dove out of the way, scrambling in the dirt. Silence descended on the arena. The driver's door opened. A boot hit the ground. Damon Thorne stepped out. He wasn't wearing armor anymore. He had stripped to his waist, his torso painted in ancient war markings of ash and blood. His eyes were glowing so brightly they looked like headlights, one blue, one gold. He didn't bring an army. He was alone. "Damon!" Garrick shrieked, scrambling behind a wall of guards. "This is neutral ground. You cannot attack here. The council will strip your title high above the head." Counselor stood up. "Alpha Thorne, stand down. You are violating the treaty." Damon looked up at the council, then at the buyers, and finally his gaze landed on Elara. He saw the chains. He saw the burns on her wrists. "There is no treaty," Damon said. His voice amplified by a growl so deep it shook the foundations of the stadium. "There is no council. There is only me, and you have touched what is mine." "Kill him!" Garrick screamed to the mercenaries. "He's one man! Kill him!" 50 guards rushed Damon at once. It was a massacre. Damon didn't fight like a man. He fought like a natural disaster. He moved with a blur of speed, tearing through the guards with bare hands and claws. He was a whirlwind of violence, ripping throats and breaking spines. But there were too many of them. Elara watched, screaming his name, pulling at her chains until her wrists bled. "Damon, behind you." A guard struck Damon in the back with a silver-tipped spear. Damon roared, falling to one knee. Another guard smashed a baton into his skull. "No," Elara sobbed. Garrick laughed, stepping out from cover. He pulled a remote from his pocket. "It's over, Damon. And just to make sure you learn your lesson," he pressed a button. Electricity surged through Elara's chains. She arched her back, screaming in agony as thousands of volts coursed through her. Damon looked up, blood pouring down his face. Seeing her in pain broke something inside him. "Elara!" He tried to rise, but 3 alphas from the crowd had jumped into the pit to hold him down. They were stomping on him, breaking his ribs. Elara's vision blurred. The pain was unbearable. She was going to die. Damon was going to die. "No." The voice in her head returned. It wasn't just a wolf anymore. It was a queen. They dare harm him. Elara stopped screaming. She opened her eyes. The violet light returned, but this time it wasn't a flash. It was a sun. The silver chains around her wrists began to glow red-hot, not from electricity, but from her own heat. The metal groaned, melted, and then snapped. Elara fell to the ground, free. The entire arena went silent. The guards stopped beating Damon. Everyone looked at the girl in the center of the ring. She stood up. Her clothes were tattered. Her skin burned, but she looked terrifying. The air around her shimmered with a violet aura. She didn't look at Garrick. She looked at the wolves attacking Damon. "Kneel," she whispered. It wasn't a request. It was a command spoken in the old tongue, the language of the first wolf. The effect was instantaneous. The 3 alphas holding Damon released him. Their eyes glazed over their wills, shattered by the sheer weight of her dominance. They dropped to their knees, pressing their foreheads into the dirt, whimpering. The silence was absolute. Even the council members in the stands felt the urge to bow. This was the Selene power. The power to command the beast in anyone. Damon stood up, shaking off the blood. He looked at Alara with awe. Garrick was trembling, backing away. Alara. Sweetie. Daddy didn't mean it. Alara turned her gaze to her father. You are not my father, she said, her voice echoing like a chorus of thousands. You are a merchant, and you are out of business. She flicked her hand. The wolves that Garrick had hired his own mercenaries turned around. They looked at Garrick, their eyes glowing violet, controlled by Alara's will. Get him, Alara commanded softly. Garrick screamed as his own guards descended on him. It wasn't quick. Damon walked over to Alara. The violet light faded from her eyes, and she swayed exhausted. He caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her tight against his chest. I've got you, he whispered, burying his face in her neck. I've got you. The head counselor cleared his throat nervously from the stands. Alpha Thorn, this is irregular. But given the display of power and the violation of the slavery laws by Garrick Vance, the council recognizes your claim. Damon looked up at the council, his arm around Alara. I don't care about your recognition, he spat. Stay out of my territory, or she will make you kneel too. He picked Alara up bridal style and walked out of the arena over the debris past the bowing wolves. Outside, the rain had started. It washed away the blood and the ash. Is it over? Alara asked, resting her head on his shoulder. The war is over, Damon said, kissing her forehead. But our reign is just beginning. The obsidian castle was different now. It was brighter. There were flowers in the gardens. Alara sat on the balcony, watching the sunset. She wore a dress of white silk fitting for the Lunar Queen. Below in the training yards, the warriors were drilling, but they were laughing too. Damon stepped out onto the balcony, holding 2 glasses of wine. He looked healthier, the dark circles gone from his eyes. He handed her a glass and sat beside her, pulling her onto his lap. Lucian is complaining, Damon murmured, nuzzling her neck. He says the new healthcare policy you implemented is costing a fortune. He'll get over it. Alara smiled, leaning back into him. Happy workers fight harder. True, Damon agreed. He rested his hand on her stomach. There was a slight curve there, a new life, an heir. How is the little wolf? Strong, Alara whispered, covering his hand with hers. Like his father. And kind, Damon corrected, kissing her cheek. Like his mother. They watched the sun dip below the mountains, casting long shadows over their kingdom. They had walked through fire to find each other. They had destroyed their enemies and rebuilt a world from the ashes. The runt and the monster. The queen and her king. I love you, Alara. Damon said the words no longer foreign on his tongue. I love you, Damon, she replied. And high above the mountains the moon broke through the clouds, shining down on them, a silent blessing from the goddess herself. And that, my friends, is the story of Alara and Damon. From a girl sleeping on the floor to the queen who commanded alphas to kneel. Alara proved that true power doesn't come from your title. It comes from your spirit. What did you think of that ending? Do you think Garrick got what he deserved, or was it too harsh? And if you were, Alara, would you have forgiven the people who mistreated you? Or would you have taken revenge? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I put a lot of heart into writing this story for you. So if you enjoyed this emotional roller coaster, please smash that like button It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next dramatic romance story. I have an even crazier twist coming next week that you won't believe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.